Scottish Highlands, the land of hills and heather, where history and romance form a background for some of the most beautiful scenery that nature has designed. Stirling has been aptly named the gateway to the Highlands, while the Morris car has always been the gateway to happy motoring. So let us enter these gateways, and with a last look at Stirling's tribute to Wallace and Bruce, pass on to the hills of Earn reality. Heading westwards, we soon come to a beautiful stretch of water right at the side of the road, which is actually the only enclosed piece of water in Scotland, namely Lake Menteith. The chief attraction of this is situated on a beautifully wooded island on which stands the ruins of the priory of Inchmahome. Here the ill-fated Queen, Mary, Queen of Scots, passed her childhood days, and a small garden and several trees there are supposed to have been planted by her. A mountain road zigzagging up woodland slopes now leads us on to the Trossachs. This road, which has only recently been opened to the public, affords the traveller a magnificent view of lochs and a profusion of wooded countryside difficult to beat. Descending the other side by an equally picturesque road, the Scots country in all its beauty unfolds itself before us. Loch Katrine and Loch Achray being two particularly bright jewels in this romantic part of the Trossachs. Easy of access, the falls of Lenny are a sight well worth seeing. Here, the waters from Loch Lubnaig cascade with increasing speed between boulders overhung with a profusion of trees, and eventually finish in a foaming white torrent around a huge rock which divides the waters. For the lover of romance, the braes of Balquhidder have a great attraction. This beautiful glen is steeped in associations of Rob Roy. The house in which he was born, and from which he carried out his numerous raids, is still in existence and may be visited by passing through this ford. Nestling between steep hills, with the water rushing by the side, the grey house is in good preservation, and it is quite easy to visualize how this romantic fugitive was so inaccessible. His grave, together with that of his famous son, can be seen in the quaint old churchyard a little higher up the glen. The braes of Balquhidder run alongside, and owe much of their beauty to Loch Foyle, the winding road at the side of which gives many a glimpse of rare scenic beauty. The musical sounds of harvesting now assailed our ears as we passed onwards through fields of golden corn. The unspoilt, uncharted seas always have an attraction for the mariner, and in similar fashion, unexplored country must always attract the venturesome motorist. Glenarmond, with its rough tracks and deserted vistas, proved a most interesting exploration, and also a very severe test for the car. Incidentally, our mechanical friend on this trip was the new Morris 12, and Glenarmond tried the springing to the utmost. Rough tracks across virgin fields led on to even deeper ruts that tested the chassis frame and springs in no uncertain manner. A series of rocky passes through small rivers were even worse, as the pools were disturbingly deep in their variance. Added to this, the close proximity of hidden rocks made one decidedly anxious as to the safety of the undercarriage and sump. Had there been any weakness or defect in the chassis design, it certainly would have been exposed by such a venturesome journey down this uncharted glen. Speeding along, we next encountered this ominous-looking sign at the side of the road, and thinking it would be a further test of our car, we headed towards the test hill of Amelry. Arrived at the base, we could see the road winding like a white ribbon over the hills. We were, however, to be disappointed, inasmuch that the car effected the climb with such consummate ease that it could hardly be called a test at all. The two hairpins halfway up are certainly acute and steep, but they are more a test for the driver than a car such as the 12. Here again, however, the views from the top and the glorious bracing air were well worth the climb. The view backwards over the glen, incorporating Loch Fruke, surrounded by hills, is in direct contrast to the view looking towards Aberfeldy, which is composed of typical Scottish hills and moorland. The mountains and hills of Scotland present an ever-changing panorama of scenery. With the sun painting them in various hues, and the cloud shadows chasing one another across them, they are always full of interest. The lower slopes of the majority of these hills are used for sheep farming, and it is well worth anyone's time to watch the shepherds and their dogs collecting the sheep at shearing time. The process of sheep shearing is absorbingly interesting to anyone unacquainted with this side of sheep farming. Remarkable skill is needed to remove the fleece quickly and in one piece without cutting the sheep. Once the animal is on its back, it's practically helpless, and the shearer is soon divested of its heavy coat. Whether the sheep like this or not is a matter of conjecture, but certainly they seem quite proud when ultimately they are released in their newly cut coats. Another characteristic of Scottish scenery is the waterfalls which suddenly burst from the hillside in never-ending streams. As an instance of this, the Brewer Falls are superb. Consisting of two distinct and separate falls, they have been pursuing their course for centuries, in the process thereof carving artistic designs through solid rock. These falls are indeed an instance of nature's handiwork at its best. The pass of Dromachta, now an excellent road, is one of General Wade's famous roads and passes alongside the railway which here rises to the highest point in the British Isles. A good surface allowed the accelerator to be pushed well down, and a steady 65 miles per hour enabled us to make good progress. Soon the Cairngorm Mountains were visible, though partly obscured in a mantle of cloud and mist. And so on through Inverness to the new road alongside Loch Ness. Scotland is spending a large amount of money improving her roads, and this is certainly a good example. No doubt, however, the vast number of tourists who have visited the district to see the mythical monster have all helped to defray the expenses, so perhaps there is a reason for the Loch Ness monster after all. Nearly every Scottish glen has some beauty which is peculiar to itself, and certainly Glen Affric is no exception. This is attributed to be the most beautiful glen in Scotland, and whether this is so or not, it most certainly is a very entrancing place. Profusely wooded with silver birch and pine trees, its steep, almost precipitous sides slope down to a rugged gorge where the music of babbling water mingles with the song of birds. Further up the glen, it opens out and embraces Loch Affric. This unique loch is made even more beautiful by a series of islets, each covered with trees of varied hue. With lingering memories of such a lovely spot, we once again turn northwards and are soon speeding along under the towering bulk of Ben Wyvis. This is the centre of the deer forests, and with the aid of a powerful glass, these beautiful animals can usually be seen feeding high up on the skyline. In the early morning, however, you may be more fortunate and come across a scene such as this, which, as an instance of nature in the wild, is difficult to beat. Through another region of beautifully wooded road, we are suddenly confronted with the awe-inspiring view of the Anne Tealach Mountains, said to be the wildest and grandest in Scotland. But time flies, and we must hasten on. With the engine purring in a crescendo of power, we are soon roaring up the road overlooking Grunard. This road, which is just a ledge cut in the cliffside, is not the sort to tackle unless you have full confidence in the brakes of your car. On one side is the face of the cliff. On the other, protected only by a small wall, is a sheer drop of some 200 feet or more straight into the sea. Nevertheless, Grunard Bay is a beautiful spot, and with the sun shining from out of a clear sky, the water has the blueness of the Mediterranean itself. The hills around this bay are practically devoid of vegetation, and were it not for their soft contours, would indeed be a very rugged sight. beauty of Scotland lies very much in its variety, and after leaving the ruggedness of the coast, the road inland, surrounded by blue larches, was indeed a pleasure. That jewel of Scottish Lochland, Loch Marie, was submerged in Scottish mist, which prohibited justice being done to this beautiful vista. The road now led on through rugged Glen Doherty. Looking back across the cloud shadows, we take a last look at the loch where over 300 years ago iron was smelted by the aid of timber furnaces. A slight detour and we turn into Glen Torridon. Here, in silent solitude, broken only by the cry of wild birds, are some of the finest mountains in Scotland. To appreciate their grandeur, they must be seen. No photograph can justly portray the majestic beauty of Ben Liathach, with its series of terraced sides like some fantastic castle, or Ben A, nearly 4,000 feet high, with its rugged flanks of Torridon sandstone and its 7 peaks. From mountain scenery, it is a natural step to a mountain pass, and the road to Applecross is certainly an outstanding example. Rising over 2,000 feet in less than 1 mile, it is a long, tiring pull for any car. The Morris 12, however, pulling grandly, showed no sign of distress whatever and remained perfectly cool during the long drag up the lower slopes. Not content, however, with this, the pass culminates in a series of short rises with gradients of 1 in 4 with terrific hairpin bends, the first one of which we found impossible to get round in one, even with the excellent lock of the 12. This was a very good trial for the OHV engine, and the fact that it showed no signs of boiling whatever at the top of the pass speaks very highly for the design of the cooling system. As to be expected, the view from the top is one of unusual splendor, and if for this reason only, the path of the wild cattle is well worth traversing. Travelling on the west of Scotland would not be complete without a crossing on one of the unique ferry boats that provide connecting links across the lochs. Here, the 12 is enjoying a ride on the roundabout before casting off at Stroh. Incidentally, we were pleasantly surprised to find that the large fees usually charged had been materially reduced. Shortly after, we were once again aboard yet another ferry, this time at Dorney, which is being replaced by a bridge. Our minds wander into the past as the castle of Eileen Donan, with its romantic stories of bloodshed and siege, looms into view. Loch Duich is well worth exploring, its panoramas of loch and mountain scenery being the equal of any in Scotland. Surrounded on all sides like a huge saucer, the waters of the loch shimmer with hardly a ripple on their surface. The further end of Loch Duich is guarded by a range of mountains called the Seven Sisters, and passing swiftly by these, we continue our journey down Glen Shiel and so on past Loch Cluny. While admiring the excellent salmon fishing available, we carry on into Glen Moriston. Moriston means tumbling waters, and certainly it lives up to its name. With a low sun painting the trees and rocks with a coat of brilliance, it presented a picture far beyond the descriptive powers of any artist of the pen. Such scenes may be the poet's paradise, but we prefer to let the pictures speak for themselves. Just before reaching Fort William is a small stone bridge crossing the river Lochie, which leads on to a district of historical romance, the head of Loch Shiel. Here is erected a memorial to Bonnie Prince Charlie, who landed here in 1745 on his ill-fated attempt to regain the Scottish throne. After his defeat at Culloden, he escaped from here to France. Retracing our footsteps, we enter the gloomy precincts of Glencoe, guarded on the east by 3 mountains called the Three Sisters. More historical stories have been written around the Weeping Glen than any other in Scotland. But with the new road now sweeping through from end to end, it is difficult to visualize the treacherous massacre that took place here in 1692. The slender monument, however, erected to the MacDonalds by a direct descendant, is a lasting memorial of the dastardly deed. While the new road through Glencoe must be ranked as an engineering achievement of no mean feat, we are afraid that it has taken much of the glamour and historical atmosphere from this otherwise rugged and gloomy glen. In parts, the old road can still be seen straggling over the landscape, as though in silent protest against the advance of civilization. And so, from rugged Glencoe, we pass into the gentle beauty of Glendochart, with its quiet river and its fringe of pines leading onto that jewel of Scottish villages, Cowley. Thus, we completed our journey, uneventfully and trouble-free, in a car which will enhance the reputation of the factory producing it. Need we say more? We cannot hope to convey the beauties of Scotland's scenery in such a short film, but we can suggest that all these scenes and hundreds of others are within easy reach of the owner of a reliable and speedy car like the Morris L. Economical and safe, it is just the car in which to see these splendid panoramas in comfort and at minimum expense. Remember, the Morris is the gateway to happy motoring and the car with the low upkeep costs.